Hello, my name is Emma, and today we are going to discuss common problems that may arise while baking muffins and what you can do to prevent it, and also why it happens. Here are ingredients for a basic muffin recipe that came from the Spruce Eats, and we will get into what each ingredient does in the following slides. So, onto the key structural ingredients of our muffins. The all purpose flour is the basic structural component due to gluten content, which allows for expansion of cells and provides rigidity of structure after baking. The main function of all purpose flour is that gluten is the major structure and starch provides some structure. So, basically, what happens is when gluten found in our all purpose flour, which is a wheat product, is mixed with a liquid. So in our case, the 1 cup of whole milk is the main liquid. So when wheat flour is manipulated with water, or in our case, whole milk, it forms an elastic complex known as gluten. And glutenin, which is part of the gluten complex, contributes to the elasticity of the dough. And gliadin, which is the other part of the complex, adds to the cohesive type stickiness. But basically, the flour needs to be mixed with a liquid so the protein complex can be formed. On to sugar. Sugar provides flavor, obviously, but the sugar amine reaction, so when sugar is interacting with the different amino acids and things, it contributes to color and browning. So we're thinking of the Maillard reaction, tenderness and volume. So sugar is a tenderizing agent by initially slowing the gluten development during mixing and then elevating the coagulation temperature of structural proteins so there is time for cell walls to stretch and volume to increase. Salt provides flavor, but it also prevents excess carbon dioxide production in the baking powder, which is our leavening agent in the muffins. So, baking powder is our chemical leavening agent that contributes to volume and texture by expanding the batter during baking. It contains the alkaline ingredient sodium bicarbonate, which interacts with acidic ingredients once totally dissolved to generate carbon dioxide for leavening. It releases some carbon dioxide during mixing at room temperature, but will release most of its carbon dioxide during the early phase of baking at oven temperature. I accidentally put salt on twice, but one thing that I forgot to mention in the previous slide is that salt also strengthens gluten. So onto whole milk. In our recipe, 1 cup of whole milk is our primary liquid ingredient. And so for the milk, when manipulated with our all-purpose flour, it forms the gluten complex by hydrating the individual proteins. Additionally, milk provides protein in casein and whey and sugar in lactose to contribute to browning, also known as the Maillard reaction. Butter coats the gluten molecules, which contributes to overall tenderness of the muffin. Its hydrophobic action inhibit gluten development. Again, we're going towards a delicious tender muffin. So it also contributes to fluffiness and again, overall flavor and tender mouth feel is a huge positive for using butter in our muffin recipe. Our egg provides some liquid and is a protein, and the coagulation of proteins lends itself to the structure of the muffin. Egg also acts as a coloring agent as the carotenoid pigments of the yolk add color to the light colored all purpose batter that we're using. Egg also acts as a leavening agent and emulsifier. The lecithin and lysolecithin found in the egg yolk are key compounds responsible for egg yolk to act as an emulsifying agent in our muffins. So, on to our potential problems. If I was explaining to a family member or a friend, this is exactly how I would explain it to them. In my assessment, I don't believe that peak tops are necessarily a bad thing unless you're in the United Kingdom when their muffins are flat and they're also cooked with different ingredients. But in the US, especially at high end bakeries, we want to look for that delicious peak top, like you can see to the right hand screen. But it comes down to personal preferences. But this can occur as a result of too much baking powder, too high of heat, if your oven temperature is too hot. The muffin tin cavities can be overfilled. Over mixing of ingredients is a big thing. Uneven oven heating and altitude, because baking powder should be reduced by 1/8 to 1/4 of a teaspoon if you are at higher altitudes. And it's important to note that If this happens, how can you fix it? Or why does this happen? Basically, what happens is the fluid mass in the tin pushes on the crust, and as the crust starts to set, the interior will still be raw and runny, which may cause the top to form a peak, as you see to the right, to the right hand picture of your screen. And preheating the oven is necessary before putting the muffin mixture in there, because this ensures uniformity of heat and temperature within the oven when you're placing the muffins in. But this could also be caused by tunneling, which we'll go over in the next slide. On to tunneling. If you look to the picture on the right hand side, you'll see tunneling in this muffin. So basically what happens is air pockets form because air gets trapped and more gluten develops. You do not need gluten to help trap air as the muffin mixture bakes, because the small amount of gluten that is activated due to the protein complex is just enough when mixing properly occurs. And we must add fat. So in our case, we have the fat in our dairy, or in our milk, we have the fat in our butter. And basically, this helps inhibit gluten formation. But the main culprit of tunneling generally is overmixing of ingredients. And so the way this can be avoided is to avoid the use of an electric or a stand mixer, and mix the batter by hand with 15 to 20 light strokes and leave some lumps in the batter. Most importantly, also, is follow the recipe to ensure proper ingredient amounts are used, because if you have too much flour or too little liquid, tunneling may also occur. A dense, tough texture of your muffin may arise if the ingredients are again overmixed. Gluten will not develop properly, which, as we know, gluten is the structural backbone of the muffins. Additionally, if vegans add, or other people add, vital wheat gluten to the all-purpose flour, it can make the muffin very chewy and very tough due to the addition of extra gluten when it is activated with a liquid. The way we can fix this is, again, do not overmix the ingredients, manipulate the wheat flour with water to ensure the gluten is activated, and again, follow the recipe. So many of these issues can be avoided if the recipe is properly followed and ingredients are properly measured. Just as bad as a dense, tough texture muffin is also a burned top muffin. Nobody wants a muffin with a burned top, as you can see to the right-hand side of your screen. Potential causes of burned muffin tops: the oven temperature may be too hot. The oven may not be properly preheated, so you put the muffins in before preheating occurs, and there is uneven distribution of heat. There could be heat pockets, which can really throw off the baking of your muffin. Additionally, cooking in a convection oven the entire time without lowering the oven temperature to account for the circulating air, and also cooking in darker bakeware, because energy transfer to darker pans occurred due to the high density conductor of a darker pan. So how can this be mitigated? Preheat the oven prior to putting your muffins in. Cook at a proper temperature. Again, follow the recipe and use a light colored muffin tin. On to bitter taste muffins. Nobody wants to consume a bitter taste muffin. I would like to point out my model, which is my daughter. She bit into a chocolate muffin, and I said, make a face as if it was the nastiest thing you've ever eaten. She bit into it and said, wow, this is really good. I said, no, 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 make a face as if it's gross, so I could take a picture for my presentation. And this is what she came up with. So she is mimicking a bitter taste of a muffin. I just thought that was funny. I wanted to share. Why does a bitter taste occur? Dry ingredients should be completely mixed together to ensure all ingredients are well blended before adding in the wet ingredients. You can use a fork or a wire whisk for this step. If dry ingredients aren't mixed well prior to the addition of the wet ingredients, pockets of air or lumps of ingredients, especially leavening ingredients, can lead to a bitter taste or an off flavor. So what can we do about this? One, ensure all of your ingredients are fresh and not expired. So just at least make sure they're not expired. Additionally, a bitter taste may also occur if there's insufficient acid to react with the alkaline ingredient. And also, this will cause the mixture to be alkaline, resulting in a bitter, soapy flavor or taste. So what can we do? Completely mix the ingredients, ensure ingredients are not expired, and again, follow the recipe. If I was to explain to my friend or family member how to make the ideal muffin, I would first tell them what we want an ideal muffin to be like. We want it to be well defined with a dome-like mountaintop lid, as you can see on your screen here. At least that's what we want here in the United States. We want a moist, soft, tender, and tall muffin. So how can we achieve this? First, Find a recipe from a reputable source, somebody who has a background in baking, who has a background in food science, and knows what they're talking about, knows how to put recipes together. Second, I would say ensure all your ingredients are fresh and follow the recipe to a T, meaning do not cut out your sugar, do not cut out your fat. Don't use a leavening agent. We definitely want to use a leavening agent, and properly measure all of your ingredients. Preheat your oven properly prior to putting your muffin in, and just follow the process to achieve the ideal delicious muffin. If you want to put fruit in your muffin, it's suggested that you first pour some batter in, then you put the fruit in, then you pour more batter over, you lightly mix it, and then you bake it. That will keep the fruit from dropping to the bottom. But overall, I would say find a reputable recipe source to make the ideal perfect muffin, and follow all directions and measure all ingredients properly. Lastly, here are my references. If you have any questions, post them below. It has been a pleasure learning with you all this semester, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season.